For those that don't know Robin, Professor Robin Banerjee is the head of psychology at the University of Sussex.
Yep.
And he's been thinking about all of these things around child wellbeing for some time, and has got a lot to say.
Brilliant, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, and despite the slightly dark entrance point talking about, despite the slightly dark entrance point thinking about why are children so unhappy, I actually am going to try and end up in a much more positive place. First of all, there is some merit to this argument. There is some evidence, in fact, that mental health has been on the decline in children and young people, and it is a real concern for all of us in the room, I'm sure. As a psychologist, of course, mental health and well-being are really central to what I do. Sure.
That was talking to it.
I'll blame him. We know, for example, a couple of years ago, the NHS did a big update on mental health of children and young people in the country, and it showed that mental health had been on the decline. Now it had moved from 1 in 10 in the previous big national survey, which was 2004, to now 1 in 9 young people between 5 and 15 displaying a clinically significant mental health difficulty, which is a high proportion, right? This is not an insignificant minority. And in fact, quite interestingly, 17 to 19-year-old young women, the figure was 1 in 4. Not like ever, it's like 1 in 4 right now. 17 to 19-year-old young women. So there's a real concern about this. In December, there was the release of the latest Pisa results, which is where there's a comparison of academic performance on math, science, and reading across many, many different countries. It's led by the OECD. And the results, there was not so much attention to it because I think of the election, right, in December. But actually there's a wealth of data to look at there. And the results for UK compared to the previous Pisa results, which was in 2015, reading was slightly improved, math was actually a slightly bigger jump, a positive improvement, science slightly down. But what was interesting was that they also asked 15-year-olds around the world about life satisfaction on a standard kind of measure that we often use in large surveys, on a scale from 0 to 10, how satisfied are you with your life? UK kids were nearly at the bottom of all the countries that were surveyed, like 69 out of 72, something like that. Right? And there had been actually quite a significant drop, bigger than any of the increases that had been observed in the academic. There's actually significant drop since 2015. So I think there's some merit in asking this question. Why is it that we're dissatisfied with our life? Now, where we go with this in school context is an interesting question, because one approach to respond to this issue is to focus attention on effectively reacting to mental health difficulties. Right, let's get into gear, figure out which are the children who have mental health difficulties or are at risk of mental health difficulties, put something in place to support those children and young people so that the problems don't escalate, or hopefully so that we can actually reduce the problems. And that's fair enough. To me, it makes sense. You're going to be thinking about, have we got a good counseling system within the school? What's the pastoral support like within our school? Are we going to be able to meet the needs of those young people who are struggling with mental health issues? But for me, that is only a small part of the solution, really a small part of the solution. Because of course, that is fundamentally reactive, isn't it? It's saying, there's a problem, we need to find which children are displaying that problem, and what are we going to do to support those children, support their mental health needs? Maybe better links with CAMS, more counseling services. I can totally see the argument for it. But it is fundamentally reactive. And we need to be thinking in a slightly different way. And for me, the question is, what should be our unit of analysis here? I think too often when we do this kind of work, we analyze at the level of the individual child. Almost as if the mental health difficulties are simply there residing inside that one child's head. That child is in a vacuum almost. It's just all in there. And of course that's wrong. The unit of analysis is not the individual child. The unit of analysis should be the network of relationships within which that child is embedded. That's what we should be trying to understand. Because human beings' well-being is fundamentally shaped by their relationships. There's no doubt about it. Our relationships make a huge difference to the quality of our emotional lives. So we need to be looking at the network of relationships. Now, I do a lot of this kind of work. I do a lot of work particularly around peer relationships in school, which, as you know, I've had 3 kids who've come through the whole education system. I know is a really big part of social life at school, right? How you're getting on with each other. And school is a fundamentally social place where those relationships make a difference to what's happening minute by minute in that school setting. Now, when you ask kids who do you most like to hang out with, this is a standard sociometric method, what you'll find is remarkable variation. Some kids will be selected a lot as kids that other children really like to hang out with. Other kids, not so much. And what's the biggest predictor of being chosen as being a child that you most like to hang out with? The biggest predictor is actually kind and cooperative behavior. Okay? And it's true for young children in preschool, it's true for 16-year-olds. I would say, actually, it's probably true for all of us as well as adults. We want to be around people who are kind and cooperative. So maybe the solution here is we need to refocus our curriculum. Maybe we need to be trying to take that wider view of success and thinking about promoting positive relationships. And of course, there are strategies that we could use, like, I don't know, maybe improving PSHE, better sex and relationships education, get specialist teachers in to support that program. And there are lots and lots of really great resources out there that can help you to do that, really great materials that are out there to support developing the social skills that enable young kids to flourish, to build those positive relationships. Things to do with conflict resolution, all those soft skills, if you like, right? Empathy, building sensitivity, being able to make responsible decisions, right? Showing self-awareness and also social awareness. All of those things we can foster in classroom lessons. But there is one slight hiccup here, which is that if you think about children's skills development in this area in the context outside school, let's say in the community or in the family, generally parents aren't sitting down saying to their kids, okay, today we're going to do a lesson in conflict resolution, or today we're going to sort out how to be empathetic. Children are learning every minute of every day from all of their social interactions, and that carries through into the school setting as well. A child could have a brilliant PSHE lesson, fantastic PSHE lesson, and develop some really good skills in that PSHE lesson. But the question I'm always thinking about is, what happens when they step out of that PSHE lesson into their next class? What's that class experience going to be like? Because they're still going to be learning social skills in all the other experiences that they have in school as well. Whether it's another class, whether it's a history, physics, or drama class, or PE class, or indeed when they're out at lunchtime in the canteen. So I think when we think about whole education, that last point that's in there, where is it here, about across various settings is really important. The learning of that wide range of skills takes place across all settings, and it involves children also looking at how staff are interacting with each other. It's not just about how staff are interacting with the kids, how staff are interacting with each other, which is why the staff members' own well-being and relationships make a big difference as well. So we need to pay attention to that. So whole education gives us that real challenge. So for me, the key here is integration. We need to integrate what we're doing around children's social relationships with everything that goes on. And part of the problem is that quite often mental health and well-being, that question, why are so many of us unhappy, that question gets sort of treated as a sort of an extra thing that schools now need to do. Not only do I have to do all the things to do with the accountability framework, exams and all the rest of it, but now we're going to have to sort out children's mental health issues as well. And that almost feels impossible, right? But to me, actually, once we start seeing that these are not competing priorities, that one doesn't take away from the other, once we start to see how they interlock with each other, then the work to address this becomes part of what it means to do good teaching and learning. So we should be looking at what is a pedagogy that supports well-being? What's a pedagogy that supports social and emotional skills? Okay, I'm going to end with one other point, and it's another challenge. It's a slight complication. You know, I was saying before, in a standard sociometric method, we ask kids, who do you most like to hang out with, right? It's actually slightly more complicated than that, but that's basically the method. You could ask a second question, and we have done. Who do you think in your class is most popular? And then we look at the profile of those kids. And it turns out, of course, you would imagine it should be the same, right? The kids who are most liked should be the ones who are seen as the most popular. But it turns out the correlation between the two is not that great. There is a correlation, but it's not that great. There are many children who are perceived to be popular. They have the status of popularity, even though they are not at all the most liked kids in the class. And it's quite a curious dissociation here, right? And it turns out that the predictors of being liked, like I said before, kind and cooperative, are rather different from the predictors for that popular status, where actually cooperative behavior is not a predictor. In fact, it's things like how they look, how much stuff they own, material possessions, often being disruptive in group relationships. Effectively, it's social dominance and prominence rather than prosociality. Now, that speaks right to the heart of the question. I thought you gave such a lovely introduction to the day, Amy. It was really great. And that you were talking about success. What does success actually mean? I think part of the problem is that there are lots of confusing messages out there. If our vision of success is academics, that's one thing. Our vision of success is actually really kind, empathetic relationships with each other, that's another thing. But actually, there's another set of really what we call in social psychology extrinsic values. Fame, image, money, having the right stuff. When you think of who is successful in life, very often we'll think of, celebrities, really successful people, because they're in the limelight, right? That's the social dominance, the social prominence. And what we know is that the more children subscribe to that extrinsic value system, the more they attach importance to materialistic attributes of image and fame and how they look and so on as a central life value, the poorer the outcomes in terms of well-being. So I think that also has to play into that slide as well. And not only that, but we've found that those young people, when we give them academic tasks that are difficult, they are less likely to persist, less likely to persevere when they encounter difficulty, more likely to focus on performance in terms of how they compare with other people, and less likely to focus on their own progress. And so when you see difficulty in those children's lives, you find that those children are running a mile. So it doesn't help in the academic curriculum. So we've got a situation here where, to my mind, there is something really fundamental we need to do about this. The knowledge, the skills, qualities, and knowledge they need to succeed and thrive. We need to define what we mean by succeed and thrive. There is a lot of unspoken stuff going on in schools about what it means to succeed and thrive. And it's not just about academics versus everything else. It's much more complex than that. And we need to unpack that and explore that with young people. And to my mind, the idea of young people taking ownership of their own learning is also asking the question, what does it mean for young people to take ownership of their own sense of what they're striving for? What does it mean to the young people to succeed in life? I'm going to leave it there, but I hope that begins a conversation that will be interesting for you today. I hope you have an amazing conference. Thanks so much.